I was in prison for 15 years, and there was a skinwalker in there with us. A little background first. I was serving a 15-year sentence in a penitentiary in southern Arizona. What I was in there for isn't important, but during my stay there were countless things that happened that no one could explain, and even more that no one wanted to explain. It all started with a prison legend. Supposedly, years ago, something awful and unexplainable happened in the prison. Every morning, we'd be woken up and expected to stand near the front of our cells, while guards visually confirmed we were present and accounted for. Apparently, about a year before I got sent there, the most brutal and unexplainable thing happened during one of these routines. A man who had a cell to himself looked very off during this check. When a guard pulled over another guard to help him check it out, they found it wasn't actually the prisoner they were expecting at all. It was a totally different man. This man was wearing the skin of the other man over him, loosely fitting, draped over him, apparently looked like a real monster. The scariest things were, though, was the guy wearing the skin was not an inmate. They had no idea how he even got into the prison, let alone a cell. What's worse was that they couldn't even figure out who the hell he was. He wasn't documented anywhere. And what's even worse than that, they never even found the body of the man, of the skin that he was wearing. Pretty grisly stuff, I know. And I realize that's not the go-to definition of a skinwalker, but that's what the prison called him. The Skinwalker. Didn't help that the guy never talked, apparently. Anyway, that's when we started the whole Skinwalker superstition, and it quickly spread around the yard. Apparently the guy got shipped to a different spot about a month after it happened, and just about everyone in Gen Pop felt all the better for it. I heard about this story on the second day of my stay. One hell of a story to hear, in the place that's going to be your home for the next 15 years. But anyway, now onto the real shit though. Sure, the guy was the Skinwalker, but all he did in the long run was get an old lifer Navajo inmate to tell everyone about actual Skinwalkers. It seemed a lot like the prison culture was actually revolving around them. Now apparently, Skinwalkers are tricky to point out on the spot, but if you manage to survive around one for more than a minute or two, almost everyone can tell the mannerisms are all off. They can mimic human speech but not replicate it. They twitch maniacally. They have an unnatural gait while walking. But apparently, they got better with experience. The old Navajo guy, his name was Carl, said that he was sure there was actually one of them among the prisoners, slowly picking us off over the years. He called it the Grand Master Skinwalker at one point. Apparently he thought it had human mannerisms down so well that you might not even be able to tell if it was your cellmate for a day or two. But it had to be good, he posted one night. He would expect a Skinwalker to jump at any opportunity for a kill. But this one realized it had a revolving door of people to kill coming to it, and masterfully bid its time, as Carl thought, for all the years it's been here. A lot of the guys found humor in it. A lot more were really on edge about it. Every once in a while, in prison, people snap. Sometimes you'll find your cellmate swinging in front of your bunk, strung up around the neck by his pant leg. Sometimes you just can't take it anymore. But in our yard, people tended to snap in a very special way. It wouldn't be an outburst at dinner or a silent suicide in the night. Guys would just stop talking, hunch over, and shuffle around. Any friendships they had would mostly be out the window. They would turn into a loner during rec time. They would let their hair hang in front of their face. No one liked to talk about it. Like if they did, it would happen to them next. I felt the same way. I didn't know if it was a skinwalker or just people going crazy, but I didn't want to find out. It wasn't clockwork or anything, but every time someone snapped in this way, it wasn't more than a couple of weeks before they were shipped off or transferred to God knows where without anyone else knowing beforehand. Then, there were the nighttime occurrences. Short, loud bursts of sound echoing throughout my cell block during all hours of the night on a regular basis. It sounded like a mix between a pig dying squeal and nails on a chalkboard. Just another thing no one liked to talk about. Even scarier were the shadows and the footsteps. The block was dimly illuminated in the night by a few lights hanging from the ceiling outside the cell. I myself saw shadows flit across my walls on a regular occasion, when there were definitely no guards near my cell or no other prisoners around. One time, near the end of my sentence, I woke up, looked at my back wall, and found a perfect silhouette of a person standing there. But when I looked, my bunkmate was asleep and no one was outside my cell. And the footsteps. Everyone hated the fucking footsteps. They were the scariest part. In the night sometimes, more rarely than the shadows, you would hear ungodly fast footsteps. They sounded like wet feet slapping a tile floor. Whatever caused them to fly from one end of the block to another in a dead sprint, whatever it was inhumanely fast. If you happened to be awake before it started, by the time you heard the footsteps on one side of the cell and whipped your head around to see the thing run by, it sounded like it was already 3 cells past you. Everyone hated the footsteps. I agreed. I thought they were the absolute worst. Anyways, I was released from that place about a month ago, and I have more stories than I can count. I swear it was nearly my turn. About a week before I was discharged, my cellmate and a good friend of mine snapped. In the same kind of way, I didn't sleep for an entire week. Well, I did sleep of course, but never more than a few minutes at a time. Never turned my back on the guy. The scariest thing, I woke up one night on him, somehow snaking his body, shaking, just rummaging through the bars of our cell. For reference, I couldn't get anything past my shoulder through them. And the worst part though, he was coming from outside our cell, back inside. On the day of my release, I didn't say a word to him. I just left. He seemed fine with it, so was I. I had made it through 15 years of prison fights, gang disputes, and for all I know, Skinwalker abductions. I left through the front gates, a free man. And as I walked along the fence for our rec yard, I spotted my cellmate, standing off on his own, like he had for the last week or so. I shook my head, not even really sure if it was him or anymore. I took one last look over the yard, this time from the other side of the fence I wish I hadn't. There, standing off on his own, on the other side of the yard was Carl, slouched over, eyeing the other inmates. And he was twitching maniacally. This was a story posted on Reddit by a user who can no longer be found. I don't know if you believe in the curse of the Skinwalker or not, but it never hurts to be careful. Don't forget to lock your doors, and don't forget to lock your windows tonight. Sleep well.